There's a lot going on in the world, but one thing that has been and will continue to be discussed in the United States Congress is the Save America Act. Many people think the bill is just a law requiring photo ID to vote, but it goes quite a bit deeper, and its political implications may skew in unanticipated directions. The original Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act was introduced in January 2025 by Republican Representative Chip Roy of Texas. It would require voters to provide proof of U.S. citizenship in order to register to vote. The revised version, now called the Save America Act, adds the requirement to show a federally approved photo ID when the vote is actually cast. Some states, including California, Illinois, and New York, have made it illegal for poll workers to even ask for a photo ID. Furthermore, the Save America Act requires states to continuously update their voter registration rolls and upload the data to a Department of Homeland Security database for eligibility checks. The goal is to improve election integrity by purging ineligible voters, non-citizens, dead people, and people who have moved out of the jurisdiction. Generally speaking, Republicans support the act and Democrats oppose it. Traditionally, Democrats have opposed voter ID laws, claiming that they impose an undue burden on minorities, especially black voters, who might find it harder to get a photo ID. I think that argument has largely fallen by the wayside. In our modern world, IDs are required for everything from boarding a plane to buying alcohol or tobacco. I've seen man-in-the-street interviews where a journalist asks black people if they have some kind of photo ID. The person is rightly indignant at the condescending implication of the question. Of course they have an ID, yet Democrats still insist that requiring photo ID to vote harkens back to Jim Crow laws meant to suppress certain groups. Republicans, for their part, take that resistance as proof that Democrats want to allow non-eligible people to vote. Both sides can make compelling arguments, at least to those who believe them. There is historical precedent. Jim Crow laws in the ironically Democratic Deep South were designed to suppress the minority vote. And Republicans are correct that virtually every modern democracy requires some form of identification at the polls. But to me, the interesting part isn't the burdens of voter ID itself, but the complications caused by the proof of citizenship requirement to register in the first place. Accepted documents include U.S. passports, birth certificates, and certificates of naturalization. Let's look at who this affects most. Democrats are roughly 10% more likely than Republicans to have a passport. Urban, higher income, higher education demographics, which lean Democrat, explain a lot of that. So passport ownership as proof of citizenship actually favors Democrats. Birth certificates? Republicans are slightly more likely to have a valid one on hand. However, Democrats argue the bill unfairly burdens women who took their husband's last name. Well, that's true. Putting aside the fairness of it, it is true that women who have taken their husband's last name do have to provide a paper trail of their name change. This fact may disenfranchise some women, but according to the Pew Research Center, along party lines, Republican women are more than twice as likely to take their husband's last name than Democratic women. Because of this, Republicans lose any advantage they may have enjoyed because of the bureaucratic onus placed on women to prove who they are. What about replacing birth certificates? I mean, if a person somehow has lost or misplaced the birth certificate, does the burden of replacing the document fall more heavily on either party's membership? A study by the Bipartisan Policy Center suggests that Republicans face measurably greater obstacles in replacing lost documents due to various factors, including rural isolation and the in-person demand the Save America Act requires for voter registration. In fact, a March 2025 report by the Center for Democracy and Civic Engagement from the University of Maryland analyzed voters in Texas to determine which political party would be impacted more by the proof of citizenship requirement like that one in the Save America Act. It turns out that more than twice as many Republicans than Democrats lacked the necessary documentation required to register. Using certificates of naturalization in order to prove citizenship has historically given a large advantage to the Democratic Party, although the gap has been narrowing in the past few years. All of this would seem to suggest the Save America Act might actually benefit Democrats electorally. So why the universal resistance from the Democratic members of Congress? I am no research wizard. These assertions can easily be verified by anyone with access to the internet. So the question remains, why such fierce resistance by the blue team? Could it be that they are really looking out for the interests of all citizens, despite the implied electoral disadvantage it might cause them? Oh, please. I would never accuse either of our two parties of such noble altruism. Both Republicans and Democrats would stoop lower than lobster poop if there's an electoral advantage to be had. So, what's left? The real heart of the resistance, the part that has Democrats' undies all twisty-turny, is the continuous voter roll maintenance and DHS cross-checks the bill calls for. States would be required to actively and continuously purge dead people, movers, and non-citizens and give the results to the Department of Homeland Security. Well, as a good libertarian-leaning person, even I'm not too crazy about the federal government having more information on me than they already have. A few quick points about the current system. First, a huge majority of both Republicans and Democrats support requiring photo ID to vote. Over 80% of all adults, according to Pew Research. Second, the Save America Act doesn't force already registered voters to re-register. If you're legally registered and still live in the same district, you're good to go. Third, this is probably all moot anyway. The Senate's 60-vote filibuster threshold makes passage nearly impossible unless the Republicans nuke the filibuster, which is risky and unlikely to happen in the near future. My guess is the real research wizards in both parties have run the numbers and concluded that constant purging of the voter rolls would have a crushing consequence for Democrats. Democrats warn imperfect matching could wrongly remove eligible voters, especially in minority or low-income areas. Republicans see bloated, outdated rolls as the perfect loophole for ineligible votes to slip by, especially after years of high immigration and loose voter registration. Audits keep finding non-citizens on the rolls, and even small numbers matter in close races. So, am I saying that the Democrats are cheating? Not necessarily. What I am saying, what bothers me most about the Democrats' strategy to justify their opposition to the bill is that they rely most heavily on identity politics. As I said, the onus to prove citizenship favors the Democrats, and virtually everyone has a photo ID they can present when they vote. But the contention that those two requirements represent an unfair and even racially motivated burden on minority communities akin to Jim Crow laws is dubious at best. It's a lazy and predictable argument. It's divisive, and frankly, it's the same old shit. Election integrity shouldn't be a partisan third rail. The bill isn't perfect, and it does create friction. But the reflexive pushback feels less like protecting vulnerable voters and more like protecting a political party that benefits from ambiguity. Thanks for watching. This is Pablo El Molinero. If you found this presentation interesting and informative, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to comment, especially if you think there is something that I missed or got wrong. In any case, please, please, please share this video with anyone else you think might enjoy it. It would really help the channel.